Welcome to Life Without Limits, where there are no limits to what you can achieve. My name is Joan Kaler, and I am your host. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for counseling or medical advice. The information is meant to inspire and educate listeners, but not guarantee anything of any kind. For more information on my services, please go to joankaler.com. Thank you. Enjoy the show. Welcome in, everyone, to Life Without Limits, because there are no limits truly to what you can achieve. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Have I got an important podcast for you today? It is my honor, it is my privilege to introduce you to my guest, but I'm going to give you a little bit of the bio first because you're going to be so excited. I'm freaking out here. Okay, Shannon King is founder and CEO of Matter of the Heart and developer of the Resilience Training Program, specializing in teaching law enforcement professionals to be resilient and more effective in their professional and personal lives. For the past decade, Shannon has researched countless methodologies seeking the techniques and tools to mitigate the effects of stressful experiences inherent to policing to be healthy, strong, and thrive. Combining her expertise in resilience building and wellness with 30 years of law enforcement work, yes, you heard it, she teaches others how to prepare for, manage, and work through adverse events. After recently recovering physically and emotionally from a life-threatening traumatic event, Shannon personally recognizes the importance of resilience preparation before trauma occurs to enable you to rise stronger. So if you want credentials, make sure you're sitting down while you're listening to this. Former lieutenant with the California Highway Patrol, Shannon initially discovered her passion for officer well-being as a peer support member and assisted in developing and delivering the department's Not One More suicide prevention program. Her 25 years with the Highway Patrol earned her numerous commendations, including the recognition of a California Legislature Assembly resolution and a Department of California Highway Patrol Commissioner's commendation. She recently co-created and is currently facilitating a 5-day Sergeant's Leadership Forum for the development. As a trainer and speaker, Shannon has shared her message to large and small groups, including headlining with Dr. Kevin Gilmartin at the Police Society of Problem-Based Learning International Resilience Conference and the Women's Leadership Law Enforcement Conference. During her 10 years with Post, Sherman Block Supervisor Leadership Institute, as a facilitator trainer, she created curriculum and taught over 200 sergeants from 80 agencies in California. I'm telling you. Shannon is a certified neurotransformational coach, emotional freedom techniques practitioner, heart math coach trainer, and certified hypnotherapist. Are you kidding me? She is trained extensively in trauma-informed care, neuroscience, and resilience building to partner with others in creating personal well-being and resilience. Practicing her own tools of self-care, hanging in her mountain oasis, or traveling with her husband, kids, and grandkids brings Shannon her greatest joy. And who can forget her 2 cockapoos who guard the house from the couch. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't figured this out by now, Shannon is I guess you're a former lieutenant police officer, correct? Do I have that correct?
Yeah, with the California Highway Patrol.
With the California Highway Patrol. I have a police officer on this podcast, and I'm going to ask the question that I've been asking for months. What the heck is going on? As well as find out, and I don't mean to giggle, because this is the most serious topic. Next to COVID-19, this is the most serious topic of our time. And we're also going to talk about Sharon's program. Shannon's program, not Sharon. Shannon, what is going on? Oh, it's just all these tragedies happening to African American and Black lives. And oh God, we had chatted a little bit a couple of weeks ago, and you said that the police officers that they were angry. They were enraged at this officer who committed this act. And I know everybody's innocent until proven guilty, but since we have the video, what happened to George Floyd and what's happening to other African Americans, what's going on?
Well, Joan, I think that that's a question. And the reason I kind of smiled just a minute ago when you asked that, I think that's a question that a lot of people are asking right now. And there's a whole lot of layers that are coming into play here in just where people are at right now, what people are experiencing, right? With, beginning with COVID, and really that this unknown that's happening. People don't know what's going to happen, and our brains don't like that. Our brain likes to be able to predict things, and we're just really in this time of stress and angst and really trying to figure out what's going on. So, I can speak a little bit from the law enforcement side here, in what's going on within the field of law enforcement. And so I would, love to go into that conversation with you. And I'll kind of let you start us off with, where you'd like to take that today. But yeah, so, there's so many layers here. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're having so many experts, on your podcast, to just get these different lens, because, we have perspectives from all over the place coming in here and trying to make sense of some of this stuff.
Well, my first question when this horrific event happened was, where did this officer come from? I mean, was he vetted? What training did he have? Was he in the military? I mean, what was in his brain that he put his knee on a human being's neck? What the heck? And for 8+ minutes. What was that all about?
Well, I think, and this is not advocating anything, but I think that there's only one person who knows what was going on in his brain, right there, and that's him. I mean, I can't even begin to speak to what was going on in this man's thought process and what was going on, and I can speak to many law enforcement people that I know, that I've worked with, thousands and thousands over the last 30 years of people that I know. And this is not something that any would be going, there's a justification for that, right? So that's a really different anomaly of a situation that has really kind of brought a whole lot of other stuff to light. When it comes to talking about vetting and training, and there are standards and requirements and stuff when it comes to vetting, involving psychological tests. And I think we take like 4, in the state of California, psychological interviews, all these different intensive background investigations and stuff. And when I see things like this happen, and this is speaking from my perspective, when I see an officer do something that is not in alignment with what we are sworn to do, what we come into this career to do, because we come into the career to help and serve our communities. And where I really go, not saying that there are not people who shouldn't be in law enforcement that get there through whatever process, they know how to answer the questions, or they know how to do what they do and they don't get caught in this very intensive process that law enforcement goes through. But what I always ask is, what's in their past?
Yes.
Right? What have they experienced on this job? Maybe before this job, but what have they experienced on this job that has not been resolved, that they haven't taken the time and the opportunity to heal from, and they're still carrying it in law enforcement. We call it kind of like the proverbial backpack, right? All of these experiences and traumas and stresses and stuff, they carry it.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I don't know with that officer, I don't know. I can't be in his head. Yeah.
So you bring up such a good point. I mean, it was such a tragedy, and then the continued tragedies of more people dying. But this is what your program does, though. It helps. I want you to explain it, of course. It helps officers, debrief, heal their traumas, because you all see the most horrific situations in humans. I mean, the anger, the rage people go through, drug addiction, alcoholism, family dysfunction, just everything. And then bam, the symptom happens, and you all are out there, you and your colleagues are out there on the front lines to protect people. All hell's breaking loose, and you're trying to protect people and protect them too. Mm-hmm. But I can't imagine that it's a daily dose of trauma.
Mm-hmm. Well, it certainly can be. It certainly can be. The law enforcement work in and of itself is a lot of really high alert, hypervigilance, because you're going into a situation that is potentially life-threatening for you, potentially life-threatening for people that you're protecting, to periods of boredom. And it's kind of hard, it's you have these periods of boredom that you're just in your car on patrol or whatever that might be. So it's a lot of up and down, when you think about the stress chemicals that are in the body, the stress chemicals that are influencing the brain, and stuff. So law enforcement does a really good job, and especially over the last several years, in addressing the stress and trauma, and especially law enforcement suicide, right? That's a big thing, because it is still a well-known fact. This was when we taught in 2005 the Not One More Suicide Prevention Program for the California Highway Patrol. We actually had an epidemic of suicides within our department, where I believe it was about 15 officers took their own lives in about less than a 2-year period, right? So that was really big for us. And that's kind of where my passion for this came in, and kind of understanding why. And law enforcement are more likely to take their own lives than they are to be killed, almost double than they are to be killed in the line of duty. And we have some great organizations out there. Bluehelp.org is one of the organizations who are now tracking suicides, because until 2016, law enforcement suicides was not being tracked at all. So we're getting some more realistic, solid numbers that are coming in. And then we have various organizations throughout the country that are really focusing on giving people that help who are suffering from post-traumatic stress injury, that stress when they get to that. My perspective is a little bit different, and it's like, let's be really proactive in building our resilience. Let's be really proactive. And that's where my Resilience to the Fourth Power program comes in, of teaching us, let's not carry things in the backpack, right? Let's deal with them as soon as we can after it happens, in ways that we actually change the physiological response, the stress response, the hypervigilant response of the body, so that our brain can be much more effective in the work that we do.
Beautiful. Yes. Because in truth, I don't want anybody to be harmed, whether it's citizen, whether it's an officer. Can't we all just take a breath here? Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this year, 2020, when we're recording, it was the most horrific year we have ever had since 1918 with the then Spanish flu or whatever they called it. I mean, it's the trifecta of tragedies this year. COVID-19, oh, citizens losing their lives. Oh gosh, I'm not just
Officers losing their lives, you know,
officers. Thank you.
yeah.
Officers losing their lives.
And you have to think about this, Joan, when we think about, especially with the availability of social media and the cable news media and all of that, we are inundated with this information
Mm-hmm.
all the time, right? So it really creates that, you know, if you have citizens who are in fear of law enforcement because of what they see and hear on um, you know, national media and stuff like that, and you have law enforcement who are in fear because they know that they're going out into maybe a environment that doesn't necessarily have their back, or they don't feel like has their back, right? It already creates us into a polarization of fear, and nobody operates to their most effectiveness when you're operating from the level of fear.
Just, gosh. And then occasionally the media does show acts of kindness between citizens and between officers, and that just makes me cry with joy that people are actually reaching out to each other, trying to increase communication, mend fences, increase communication. So
I started my own little Facebook group just on a whim a couple weeks ago because, you know, our brain likes the dangerous. Our brain likes whatever it is that, you know, it's attracted to whatever it's going to perceive as danger because it needs to survive. That's its role. And I did start a little Facebook group called Highlighting Positivity Between Law Enforcement and Their Communities. And I've just been sharing those stories, like you say, you know, on there because we have to have those stories as well.
Yes.
Yeah, we have to have that balance.
I mean, I'm just going to take a stab at this. You are the expert, but I'm thinking that 98, 99% of officers really do have the best interests of citizens at heart. But then when someone has trauma and a tragedy happens, that's all you see on the media.
Yeah. Well, and you know, I'll just share, and I'm not going to go into statistics and stuff right now because it's out there. You can find, you know, national numbers that are actually representative of, you know, over 900,000 or close to 900,000 law enforcement officers in the United States, and what they do and the actual levels of you know, it's like 10 million contacts a year or something, and the percentage that are contacts that don't go as people would want them to go, I would say it's probably high, you know, higher than even the 98, 99%. I think it's a really small fraction of law enforcement that doesn't come into this job and do this job because of commitment, you know, and how they want to help the communities they come in to serve. That's what they're sworn to do, is to serve. And you're right, when we have something that happens and that's tragic, it's not the good stuff that's highlighted, it's the tragic stuff that gets highlighted. And yeah.
Sadness for all concerned, truly. I just want to speak just a minute about this thing about defunding the police, and then I want to get to your program and how it is so helpful for officers. But I'll just talk about defund the police, defund the police. That is not necessarily a great idea because, I mean, okay, I'm going to put it out there. I'm white. I don't have the same experience as an African American, but I can't think that that's a good idea. I mean, we were talking before I started recording about allocating resources, but not to defund the police, not to take the police away. We still need law enforcement, but if we can add training, mental health services, that's what needs to be done, in my humble opinion.
So, yeah, so I'll speak to that a little bit based on my experience and my knowledge. So, well, let me go back. So for years, you know, I've been teaching law enforcement. I've been in law enforcement since 1987, which is sad to admit because that tells you how old I am, but since 1987. And I don't think much of our conversation has changed in that there's increasingly responsibilities placed upon law enforcement that probably shouldn't be law enforcement's job, right? You know, we have the challenge of homelessness in the United States. And law enforcement do not have the tools, they don't have the resources to deal with that issue other than what's present for them, right? There's not resources for them to get the homeless people those resources that they need, right? So there's different things that have been placed more and more and more on law enforcement as a responsibility to take care of when it's really not, they're not equipped to do that. And with that, they get, every time we have a new requirement, whether it's from the city or the state or the county, whatever that is on law enforcement, then there's a training, right? So when we had there was a mandate that all law enforcement had to be trained in mental health. And that's to deal with people who are having mental challenges when they encounter them. And what I found was very, very few of those classes offered their own personal mental health, right? So it was about how do they deal with people who are having a mental crisis. And this is very typical. If you looked at what law enforcement is actually set to continually train on, it's everything that comes new in our society that's expected for them to respond to and to handle. They have to be trained in that. You know, so they get all kinds of training in diversity and dealing with different groups and dealing with mental challenges and dealing with terrorism and dealing with, you know, I mean, we could go on and on and on, and it's consistent training. And there are groups who are advocating defunding the police completely. I think they're a small minority. A lot of them are talking about redirecting funding. And, you know, that's a multi-layered issue in and of itself, because those decisions have to be made at the local government or the state government level. That's not even within the purview of the law enforcement, right? That's whatever their governing bodies are. But what we do know is that it's training. It's training for the law enforcement that is going to get cut. And I don't think we want to cut training for law enforcement. We need to continue to equip them with the training and the tools that they need, not only for them to do their job, but also for them to be healthy in doing their job.
Bravo. Yep. Definitely. So then your program comes in, Resilience to the Fourth Power. Let's talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you teach how to help officers release the trauma that's in their backpack.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to resolve those adverse events that we tend to carry around, because you and I know, as the work we do as EFT practitioners and the things that we do like that, it's all connected to those emotions that haven't been processed, right?
Yes.
Through those adverse actions and stuff. So the foundation of the resilience of the fourth power really came to me, I guess, manifested to me after I had my own life-threatening event that occurred about 2.5 years ago now. And what I recognized once I was out of the initial danger of being killed, I was mauled by a large dog. And once I was out of the initial danger of that situation in and of itself, because of what I know, because I work with this stuff all the time, and I didn't have this when I was in law enforcement, right? So I didn't have this knowledge about my brain and my body and trauma and stress and all of that, is I knew that I needed to do something to protect my brain. I did not want to have post-traumatic stress injury from that event, and very well could have. And so because of what I knew, I immediately started my own trauma recovery team to help me process the aspects of that event so that my brain could do with it what it's designed to do and not have it cause an injury. And so what I really started seeing was the different components of what I put together as resilience to the fourth power, which is just a foundation for training. And when we think about resilience, I think a lot of times we kind of think of it in the passive. It's something that you have, right? You're resilient. You're a resilient person. Or we tell people, you're going to be resilient when you're on the other side of this. Well, that may or may not be true, depending on how they deal with that situation. But we're designed to be resilient as human beings. And I think especially law enforcement first responders, because of the training that we go through, because of the vetting and the testing and everything, right? We have to be strong just to even come into this career. So I came up with the concept of think about like a propeller, right? So envision a propeller. And if you put the first blade on there, I think this is the foundational blade, and that's the personal responsibility of resilience. You can have your organization give you all the training, and I'm speaking of law enforcement right now, but this would apply to anybody. Your organization can bring you all the training in the world, right? They can bring you so much training for resilience and mental health and all that stuff. And if you don't take the personal responsibility of using the tools, the knowledge that's given to you, then it doesn't do any good, right? So that has to be the first blade. But if you only have one blade on a propeller, it's going to be kind of wonky, right? It's not going to spin very well. So the second blade that I put on, so think about a two-propeller prop that's on a small airplane, is what I call resilience preparation. And what I mean by that is we know through studies, through the heart math studies and stuff, that people can actually increase their capacity for resilience if they take care of. So think about a container, right? And you can increase that container of resilience, but that really requires taking care of the old stuff. Go in and take care of the old stuff that's already in there and clean that up. And then in addition to that, take care of the stuff that happens on a regular basis, right? So if I liken this to an officer working or a deputy working, they have these different aspects throughout their day where nobody likes to see us, right? Nobody likes to see law enforcement because they're either going to be told that they were doing something wrong, or they're in a really bad spot themselves. They're in a tragic situation, whether it's an accident or, something that's violent to them or whatever. So us showing up, while we might be comforting, it's not necessarily a good thing for people. And so officers deal with that all day long. So if they stop someone for speeding, though that person's not happy, right? So there's that level of interaction. If they have to go to a domestic violence call, or they go to some accident that's bad, whatever that is, that's elevating them all day long. So if they can take the time to use the tools like we have with EFT, or heart focused breathing, or whatever that is in the moment, then they can kind of bring their system back to neutral. They can bring their system back so that they're a clean slate when they go to the next call, right? So I call that resilience preparation. Let's keep renewing our resilience so that we're better, because we know something's going to happen. We know that there's going to be some incident that's going to be a big one. And after that incident happens, then let's talk about resilience restoration, which is the third blade. So think about 3 blades now on a windmill and how efficient that is, energy efficient and stuff. And so that resilience restoration is, what do you need to do to to process that event. What do you need to do? Just as it was in the dog mauling that I experienced, there were various things that I needed to do. And EFT was a major foundation in that, processing that, you know, the matrix reimprinting, processing that so my brain could process it, my body could process that trauma, and make it a memory and not an activated situation all the time, right? Like PTSI tends to be. And restoring that, doing the things that need to happen to bring yourself back to that state of health that you want to be in, but even being stronger. You know, I know that when we go through these really adverse things, that we can actually be stronger and more resilient on the other side. And then the fourth part of that, the fourth blade on the propeller, would then be the organization responsibility. And what kind of culture is being created? We have a lot of stories that we tell ourselves, like, cops don't get help, my department's not going to support me, and they're valid because it's been in the past, but I think those are changing. So, and the organization, to me, because I do couples coaching for law enforcement, because the family is like one of the most important, right? So
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the organization could be the agency or the family, but it's like, what kind of resilience culture do we have? You know, is it okay for a deputy to walk in after just being at a really horrific scene and saying, you know, oh my gosh, my day has just sucked and this is really weighing heavy on my heart, you know, and then getting the support that he or she needs to help process that before it becomes that injury.
Mm-hmm.
So it's that. So then, if you have all four propellers on, or all four blades, then that's a pretty effective propeller.
Fantastic. And just if there's anybody out there that doesn't know what EFT stands for, emotional freedom techniques,
Yes.
EFT tapping, the tapping thing based in Chinese medicine where we tap on points, and that lowers cortisol, it calms the amygdala, it processes emotions, it helps to switch irrational thinking or negative beliefs, I should say. It's a mind-body somatic connection, which in my opinion, that or eye movement desensitization reprocessing are the two best tools that I have discovered for processing trauma.
Mm-hmm.
There are some others out there, but boy, and I'm trained, as are you, Sharon, in emotional freedom techniques. I feel very fortunate to be trained in this.
Yes, me too.
Yes.
I honestly believe that. I mean, I didn't have anything in my 25-year career as law enforcement that was as life-threatening and traumatic as the dog mauling was. And I am just grateful that I had that tool and I knew about it. And of course, I did not tap myself on that. That was too big of a trauma. But I set up my own team of my coach mentors. You know, Craig Wiener was the major person that I worked with to process through that, and I'm really grateful to have had that knowledge.
Well, did this happen while you were serving with the California?
No,
Oh,
no.
okay.
This was about 2.5 years ago. So this was, yeah.
And I also want to put out there that we as EFT practitioners, I think Shannon, why do I keep calling you Sharon? Shannon, I think you are too, but advanced practitioner with EFTI International, that's your designation also?
Yes.
Okay. This is not some weekend thing that we take, believe me. This is a very intensive program, and I've been studying EFT since 1996. So this is not just something that we read in a book or watched on YouTube. There is a very specific training program for those who choose to be EFT practitioners with EFT International. So just saying, and if anybody's interested in learning more information, just feel free to go to my Facebook page or send me an email, and I will happily give you more information on that program.
You know, and I'll put another caveat in there too when we talk about emotional freedom techniques, and that is what I really find so valuable, so when you're working with a practitioner, someone who has the training, and my focus has been in trauma resolution or adverse event resolution, and that's a whole nother level of specialization, right? That goes with that. But just learning about tapping and how to apply yourself, because it's a tremendous self-regulatory tool for people to use for all different things, and that's why I think if I were queen of the world, every law enforcement and first responders would learn it in the academy, because
from your lips. Yes.
yeah, I mean, it would just a self-regulatory tool when they recognize that their amygdala is activated, they're dumping all those stress hormones into their body, they just come out of a really bad call, and they can take that 5-10 minutes of tapping to bring their system back into alignment, like you said, reduce the cortisol, activate the good stuff. And because I'm also a neurotransformational coach, I'm always looking at the integration of the brain and having the hemispheres working together. And I think EFT is a wonderful tool to get those hemispheres back in alignment and integration with each other, right? So that their people are thinking right.
Someday, everybody will be tapping.
It would be a great world, let me tell you.
Yes, it would. Oh, well, we're both doing our very best to get the word out there. There's no doubt about it. Shannon, your website is under construction, right? So
it is.
Okay, so no problem on that. Facebook pages or anything that you want me to share?
So I do have Resilience for Law Enforcement on Facebook, and that's just what's Resilience for Law Enforcement. You can find me, Shannon King, on Facebook. I can be reached at any time so my law enforcement website is Resilience for Law Enforcement, and it is under construction right now, but I can be reached at Shannon at resiliencefordlawenforcement.com at any time. I get the email and stuff. And if you go to Resilience for Law Enforcement right now, you're going to get the page for my 3-day event that's going to be coming up in February.
Okay, so all I have to do is learn how to spell here. Resilience for Law. Wait a minute. I do so much. Come on, no dyslexia right now, please. Okay.
So when you go .com, do /elevate, elevate.
Oh, I was going to go on your Facebook page.
Oh, okay.
Oh, is that still Resilience for Law Enforcement, or is that something else? Okay.
It is.
Why am I not? Okay, world, thank you for your patience.
I can always send you the address too after.
Here we go. Ta-da! Okay, because I want to share something here. All right, so I'm going to go here. I'm going to share, get back here, go here, go here. I love sharing. All right, so Resilience for Law Enforcement, Master of the Heart Coach. Beautiful. This is so cool. All right, so that is Shannon's Facebook page. And then every single thing I'm going to put in the iTunes description, everything, ways to contact you, because is your desire, Shannon, to take your program nationally all over this country? I mean, what is in your wildest fantasy, what would you like to do with your program?
Oh, I just have a ton of things I want to do. So yes, I mean, I would love to get a proactive resilience training program. Let's teach our officers and deputies to understand and to know what's going on in their brain when we have these things. It's not because they have a inferior constitution, when they have this experience, or they have this stress, or they have this traumatic response. It's because we are all human beings and we're wired to be a certain way. And I think when we know and we understand that, and then we have the power that we can do things about it, right? We can actually do things to help our brain process the stress or help our brain process that. So yes, I mean, I would love for every officer to have the opportunity to have that kind of training. I'm really focusing also in law enforcement, first responder couples, because I think that that is just a huge foundational piece for officers to have that supportive family community. So it's a little different facets of it.
Do you do coaching through Zoom? So you're in California, if somebody's in another state, you can still work with them through Zoom.
Yes, most of my clients are distance clients. So most of
Okay.
my sessions happen via Zoom, or a telephone coaching call, however it
If an
works out.
officer would contact me, I mean, in 26 years, I've had maybe 3 officers contact me. I'd say, no, just go to Shannon and be done with it. Okay, because
That'd be great.
she's the expert in this. I mean, I might have the compassion, but she's the expert. Just call her right now. Fantastic. I can't think, is there anything else you want to share? This has been such an incredible conversation. I'm so grateful that you agreed to do this so I can get the word out there. And of course, you're going to get the links for all this so you can share it with whomever you choose.
Great. So I think, Joan, I think, and this isn't anything new, but I think we need to be reminded about this. And I really look at, especially with where we're at right now with, people are really feeling the stress of COVID. They're feeling the stress of what's going on in some of our cities. We've got the political stuff that's going on, all of this stuff. And I think it's just really important on a couple of levels of, one, put some good stuff in your brain, right? Put good stuff in your brain. You have to take a break from all of this constant bombardment that we get through Facebook. My kids were just up, my grandkids were just up to visit, and I wasn't on Facebook for like 4 days. And it was wonderful, right? It was just wonderful to take that break and to kind of get away from that. So put good stuff in your brain. And then the other thing I would say is make sure that you're looking for conflicting information from what you're already getting, right? We don't want to get into those developed neural pathways that confirm our bias that we already have. All of our brains are biased, right? We like purple, we like, Chinese food, whatever that is. And it's like, you give your brain that information that causes it to stretch and exercise. Read something, put something in your brain that goes against what you believe. And it doesn't mean that you have to accept it, but it gives your brain the opportunity to get out of the rut. So you can expand and make your brain more, neuroplasticity more flexible, yeah, make it more flexible. And then take that time to whatever it is for you, whether you meditate, whether you pray, whether you love your nature walks, whether you love your exercises, you have to do that for yourself. You have to do that. We can't just sit and not allow ourselves to have that sense of renewing and stuff.
Well, I was fortunate enough this past weekend to go out to a stable because I love horses. Not that I have one. I haven't been horseback riding for a very long time. But being around horses and then just laying in the grass and getting grounded, it's like, I'm in my happy place.
Yeah.
Talking to a horse, hugging a horse, I am in my happy place.
Smelling a horse.
Smelling a horse. So I'm going to investigate this weekend. There is an equine therapy stable not far from where I live. So I'm going to go out there and see if there's anything I can do to volunteer, because I can't think of anything more wonderful than helping young children, helping people, and combining horses with that. So if there's anything you all can teach me to do, and then if I get to hug a horse and smell a horse in the meantime, that's all better. Oh, I can't wait to meet you in person, Shannon.
Oh, it'll be great.
It'll be great. So I've got to get it together here and thank you so much for what you're doing for law enforcement and helping families of law enforcement and making a better community all the way around. And I want to thank my listeners and my viewers. I always tell you folks that I'm going to have somebody interesting. So never doubt that I will have the creme de la creme, the best of the best on my podcast. And today is no exception. So thank you all for listening and watching. And until next time, remember, there are no limits to what you can achieve. Bye, everyone.